What y'all listening to?
Limelight Highlight Podcast.
Welcome back to the show, your positive podcast, safe space and great place for a positive outlook on life. Back at it again with another interview, and this episode will be a little bit different from the last few podcasts. Since the last few interviews have been a little heavy and focused on some more serious problems and people advocating for solutions to those problems. Not to say that this podcast isn't serious, but you may find it to be a little bit of a break from all the weight of some of the topics that we've been covering over the last few weeks. On this episode of the podcast, we're going to be joined by Genesi from GTalk, a YouTube channel that she runs, and we did a little bit of a collab for this one. This is my first actual videoed podcast / YouTube channel episode, so that's pretty exciting. But we dive into a bunch of different topics and why we both decided to become curators of content and why we chose our respective creative spaces. Overall, it was a fun discussion on various topics, so I hope you come out of this one inspired and with a better, more positive attitude. I look forward to meeting and engaging with a lot of these people that she mentioned throughout the episode in the future, so stay tuned. Before we get too deep into this episode, it wouldn't be a Limelight Highlight podcast without an unrelated fun fact to get you going. So, this week's unrelated fun fact is going to touch on a little previous fun fact that we covered before. I shared a while back how Pringles aren't actually potato chips, instead they're actually potato crisps. Well, your fun fact is that the inventor of the Pringles can is actually now buried in one. Frederick Barr was so proud of his design for Pringles that he wanted to be buried in one. He died at 89 and his children stopped at a Walgreens on the way to the funeral home to buy his burial Pringles can. And it was reported that his children briefly debated on what flavor to use, but at the end of the day, they went with the original, and I think that was the right decision. So that was your unrelated fun fact. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Nice, short, sweet to the point. So, with that being said, let's welcome Genesi from GTalk to the podcast. Hope you enjoy listening. And we're recording.
All right. Welcome back to GTalk. Today we have, who do we have?
Jonathan Rosario.
And you from where?
I am from Philly, but I'm the host of Limelight Highlight podcast about positivity.
Yeah,
You're wearing a shirt?
Oh, no, absolutely.
I appreciate that.
You feel me? Y'all go ahead.
I need a GTalk shirt, so.
I got you. I'm going to get another order in because, know, Shorty sold out. But I got you.
All right, sounds good.
We're going to do a collab today, so listen to us talk, guys.
Yeah, that's why you see the setup with the mics instead of her usual setup, I guess.
Yeah, this is new to me. I've never done a podcast.
And this is new to me because I never done video. So we learning things today. So as I said before, this podcast and YouTube channel, well, my podcast anyway, is about all positivity and positive things. So I'm just going to go run through and ask, you go by Henny or
I mean,
Hennessy,
people call me Henny.
What do you like?
Henny or Hennessy?
Okay.
I mean, that really wasn't your question. You told
No,
me
it
to
wasn't.
Pick one.
Well, no, it's okay.
Hennessy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the drink cognac. Okay.
Well,
so
like the Bible, but I guess.
Yes. Well, in Spanish. Right. Anyway, so GTalk. You are the producer, editor, host. Tell the listeners what GTalk is about.
So GTalk originally was not supposed to be GTalk, actually. It was supposed to be something else. But GTalk essentially is a space where people can come and tell their story, just letting people know, like, hey, you're not alone. We all go through stuff. Like, just because you think you're in a situation that someone else isn't going through, that's not the case. Like, there's other people going through the same things that you're going through. So, yeah, I'm just here to give people a platform to share their story, share some positivity, share something good that's going on in the community. So GTalk is just an open space for everyone.
And it's everything that I like to highlight, pretty much.
This is why we're here.
Yeah. So what I like to do usually is my regular podcast is without guests, is weekly. And I like to highlight some problems and stuff like that. But since I've been home in Philly, because I'm living in San Diego right now, Tommy, the president of the Block is Back, hooked me up with all these interviews.
Yeah, y'all should know about the Block Gives
They
Back,
know.
because y'all know I'm always on them, and Keem was on with GTalk, so y'all should know about the Block Gives Back. So,
and one thing that, throughout all the interviews that I've been doing so far, one thing that's been standing out a lot is support groups. Not necessarily specifically like, oh, I set up a support group or something like that, but from what you're telling me, it's like a support group.
yeah.
The more you talk to people, the more if one person is watching this or listening to this, they're like, oh, you know what? I experienced those same struggles, or whatever topic that you guys are talking about that day. They know where they can go to or relate. And people love two things. They love authenticity and they love transparency. And when you share those things on a video or on a podcast, people can relate and they know that they're not alone in the world.
Right.
So that in itself is super positive. What made you want to start GTalk?
So, like I said,
talk just a little, like a fist distance away. Yeah, you're good.
So GTalk originally wasn't supposed to be GTalk. I was supposed to do this with Trixie and my friend Kat. And Trixie was like, oh, yeah, nah, I'll record y'all if you want.
She didn't want to be in the limelight?
Nah, she was not with
it. A better term?
No, and then my friend Kat, if you've watched GTalk, she's been on GTalk, and she had a brain aneurysm. So I wanted to start.
She's a huge supporter of the Block Is Back.
She is. Well, both of them are.
And Limelight Highlight, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't think I've actually ever met her in person, but
I mean, we can make that happen. But yeah, so originally it was supposed to be us three, but I wanted to give Kat the space to share her story because she's been through like a lot in life. I know that we shared some of her story on GTalk, but that's not the full story. Like there's other things that happen in her day-to-day life that I was like, oh, you know what? You should share this with everyone. Like there's other people in your situation. You're young, like really young. There's other young people that are probably sitting there like, man, I don't know what to do. How am I going to get through this? And it's like, you can be that change for them. But we tried to record, and it was an epic fail.
What happened?
It was an epic fail. Like, I don't know if she was just like camera shy or like she wasn't comfortable being on camera.
Was it like awkward silence and just?
She was just being awkward. Like, I don't know. It was just weird. And then she was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. And I'm like, you know what? It's okay. So then I'm like, I still want to do this. How can I find a way to do this? And I'm like, I want it to be something that's real and raw and like authentic for everyone. And I'm like, yo, my name is Genesi. It starts with a G like original gangster, gangster. I'm like, you know what? GTalk, like it just flows. So I am the G in GTalk, and all of my supporters are G's.
Nice. And what are some of the things that you ran into? Like, I know I ran into a lot of trouble when I first started the podcast, but what are some of the things that you had to overcome and you figured out as, trial and error kind of thing?
So filming would be one of them. I had to like figure out how am I going to film this? And I was doing it off of my phone. Like, I love the quality on iPhones. So I had a friend like just give me feedback like, hey, put your phone on this setting for your camera. And even I think I posted something on Instagram asking about like for suggestions, and you sent me like what kind of mic I should use.
Oh,
and
the
I was
lapel
like,
mics. Yeah.
And I went
them in there.
and I bought them, and it was like, oh my God, this makes a complete difference. So filming, audio, like uploading videos, figuring out how to put my logo on the video, like it was, when you're a one-man team or a one-woman team, you have to figure out a lot of things on your own. But I guess I'm lucky enough that I have people that are willing to give me some feedback and some helpful tips.
You got a little support system.
Yeah.
It's like, so for those of you who don't know, the Block is Back just did their Block to School drive this past Saturday.
They did. Which is where I got this fabulous shirt.
Yeah. So speaking of the shirt, Tommy and the Block is Back crew have been such huge supporters of the podcast.
And they always talk about me. Sheesh.
Yeah,
they should chill.
What I love about it though is like they don't ask for anything in return. And I showed up in my Block shirt, not expecting anything but to work throughout the whole day. And he comes up with a box of these.
Oh, they gave you the shirts? I thought you brought them.
No.
What?
So I'm just, and that was my exact reaction. And I was just like, bro, what?
They're so nice.
Yeah. He's
when
like,
they want to be.
He's like, all you got to do is pay me back. I'm like, I mean, I can't say no. Like, nah, these, like, I didn't ask for this. But
oh, that's so cool.
What I love about it, though, is like, we started selling them. He ordered 30 shirts. I have 2 left. I got them on Saturday. Today's Monday.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro. And what I love about it is they forced me to grow. Like, he put me in a position where I'm like, I got no choice. Not that I'm complaining, because that's how you grow, is when you're put in an uncomfortable position. But it's like, also he showed me, like, because I'm forced to be in this position, that I know now that it can work.
Right.
I know where to get the shirts. I know what to put on them. I know I'm coming up with other ideas.
It's a start.
Yeah,
it's
you know
a
what I mean?
start for
so
something
it was like
new.
a nice kick in the butt and be like, yo, you should have been done this.
But can I ask you a question, since we're already talking about you? Like, how did Limelight start? How did you start? Like, where did you pull this from?
Okay, so I started my podcasting little career, if you can call it that, or hobby, with my other 3 friends. So I was in the Marine Corps, got out, I work on helicopters. I did the same thing, and it started to get really repetitive. Everything we did was the same thing over and over and over again. So we were allowed to listen to music in headphones, so I would listen to music, but after a while, that got old. And my buddy was like, yo, have you listened to a podcast? And I'm like, what is? I thought a podcast for the longest. I thought a podcast was just like a mix of a bunch of music that a DJ put together. That's what I thought it was.
Like a little mix.
Yeah. So I'm like, I like music, but I don't want to hear house music for 2 hours. Like, and that's what I thought it was. And there are some podcasts, like downloads, that are like that. But he's like, no, listen to Joe Rogan. You know, I'm sure everybody hears of Joe Rogan Experience. He's got a YouTube channel and a podcast. But after I started listening, I was like, yo, I could do this. Or I just started, I'm a naturally curious person, as I said before, and I love listening to people talk, especially about nonsense to like the craziest things and I've learned so much from listening to countless and countless hours of podcasting that I thought to myself, I could do that, you know? So I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to get. I didn't know how to start it. So the one thing I do is, you know, we keep talking about these support groups. I asked my 2 friends who introduced me to podcasting, who I thought would be interesting on a podcast. I was like, yo, would you be interested in doing a podcast? And one of them was like, hell yeah. And the other was like, of course. So we figured out everything we needed. We got the audio interface. We got some cheap mics on Amazon for like $15 a pop. And we just needed a program to record. And GarageBand is it.
Yep.
And so with that being said, I pretty much was like, all right, cool. So we did it. And we started this podcast called The Enlightened Heathens. And all we did was, it was a bunch of, can I curse or?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a bunch of bullshit. We were just fucking around the entire time. It was like
hanging out with your
buddies. And it was all about pop culture. Sometimes we did music. Sometimes we did crazy news. And we would do movie reviews. Like just anything and anything you could think of. It was called The Enlightened Heathens. And after a while, there were some creative differences. But ultimately, the other guy our third guy who helped set up the whole podcast, he got a better opportunity and he moved to New Mexico. And basically after that, it was like, okay, we're not going to keep doing this. But because of that, I was like, you know what? I wanted to start a podcast. Ultimately, I didn't want it to be The Enlightened Heathens, although I was going with the flow, which I thought was great. And I said, you know what? I know what I got to do. I know what I need.